There are two factors that position us very well. This is one of them. The second one I can talk about later is the resurgence of manufacturing in India with Indian companies. But first, to specifically address your point, we feel that there is a limited time because companies around the world are looking to diversify the supply chains. And India is clearly a destination that can benefit from that. A lot of activity has happened already in terms of an ease of doing business, single window clearances, in terms of setting up the infrastructure, both digital and physical, to be able to set the right context for companies to come in to be competitive in India. And we see the government making a lot of significant steps. We see them understanding the urgency in terms of the timeline as well, and doing everything that's required to be able to attract top companies around the world to India.
Right. I have to ask you, Dr. Shah, about the one euphemism when we speak to any big corporate leader, which is India Inc.'s animal spirits. It's something that everyone has been looking for the last several years. Do you think the animal spirits are finally back? We've seen a small increase or resurgence, say, in capital expenditure, in capex, private capex by India Inc. Do you see that picking up speed and steam?
The animal spirits are back, Tamanna, and we at Mahindra have talked about doubling our capacity, which we have done. We are producing vehicles that are the best in the world and are competing with all the global leaders and winning in India by a big margin. And we've talked about taking them across the world as well. So this is the second point I was referring to, which is the resurgence of Indian manufacturing and the fact that not just us, but a number of other companies are building world-class products in India, and we're truly now making in India for the world. There's obviously a lot more to be done in terms of setting up various markets around the world and succeeding there, but we're on a very good path already, and this is really what I would refer to as animal spirits in terms of the confidence we have to be able to not just win in India, but to win around the world.
All right, so let's tie those two things together. Investments to become a very clear and long-term alternative in the China Plus One scheme, animal spirits resurging at a time when US recession fears have receded, but the global climate is still fairly uncertain. What is the thinking within top corporate leadership?
The thinking that we have is never waste a good crisis. So if there's a crisis in the world, let's take advantage of it. This is the time for us to get ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. If you will allow me, I want to focus a little bit on what is happening in the Mahindra Group. You mentioned briefly on, capacity addition, targets, etc. But if I just talk about specifically tractors, auto, what are the signs looking like? And November was a good month for tractors on the back of festive buying. The overall view, though, and concern, though, is rural India participating in the same kind of enthusiasm as the rest of the economy? What would be your view on that?
Tamanna, rural India has held up very well. If we look at a longer time period, not just 1 year, the first year post-COVID, the tractor industry grew 27%. And after a very significant growth, it grew again the following year. So at this point in time, we do see rural farm participating well. Non-farm in rural, based on a number of things we hear, is continued to be a bit weaker. But from an overall tractor standpoint, our estimates at the start of the year was for the industry to grow at low single digits. It may grow slightly less than that, possibly even a low single digit negative growth, but not significantly off. And on balance, as we look at the longer run, we're pretty much on track. We do expect the industry to be steady as it goes forward, and a long-term growth estimate for the industry is high single-digit growth on a steady basis. So it will deviate from that from time to time to some extent, but at this point we're seeing it pretty much on track.
But, you know, I just want to understand from the perspective that when we're talking about India growing at 7% this year, and the RBI recently has upped its outlook and its estimate for FY24, we've also had a year of patchy rains, a bit of pain on the agri side. Do you see that recovery also coming in on the rural side over the next 6 months to a year?
We do see that recovery because overall we still think that farm-based rural is still strong, and therefore it is just a function of time for it to come back. Again, we don't see it being really off by a big margin right now either. So therefore, as I said earlier, we're pretty much on track at this point.
Let me just get a sense from you on the exports segment. So exports had a great recovery, a very interesting recovery for India and Indian companies. And then, of course, those clouds on the horizon, what's happening in Europe, what's happening in America. Do you see India's export turnaround fire? Because in a sense, if you look at it, we are firing on all cylinders. Exports is caught up, joined the party. The question is about sustainability.
Exports is doing very well, and again there's been a tremendous effort that the government has put into driving exports at this point. We've seen huge growth numbers. F23 versus F17 is almost a 10x growth, and you're right, it's moving well. I would say it's sustainable at this point. Not just sustainable, we would likely even accelerate the growth further, because if we look at the targets that have been laid out for Viksit Bharat, and at FICCI's annual general meeting last week, we had a number of senior leaders, including the Raksha Mantri, the External Affairs Minister, and the Commerce Minister, and they talked about the vision for Viksit Bharat. And for that to happen, manufacturing has to also go up from 15% to 25% of our GDP. So if you look at manufacturing growth in India, it's going to have to be at least about 15 to 16 times what it is today. From now till 2047. And for that to happen, we will have to make in India for the world, and exports will have to continue its trajectory and in fact have an inflection point to grow even faster.
You know, we spoke about this when we did the NDTV Profit launch as well, and I'm glad I'm getting an opportunity to ask you this question. What can India Inc. do to really move towards this goal of a Viksit Bharat by 2047? I mean, the estimate is that you need to grow at least 7.6% real GDP to reach the Viksit Bharat. Is it going to be on the leg of manufacturing? Is that going to be the push? Do you expect consumption to hold through? Just your thoughts on the role that India Inc. can play.
So first, Amana, congratulations for the NDTV Profit launch, and our best wishes to the channel. We're looking forward to partnering with you in a number of ways. In response to your question, with regard to what India Inc. has to do, I think it clearly has to play a key role in getting to Viksit Bharat and partner with the government in doing so. FICCI is positioned extremely well in this because we're the largest, one of the oldest bodies in India. There are 300 regional associations that are members of FICCI, collectively 250,000 companies that are members with all the regional associations. So we represent large companies, medium-sized companies, MSMEs, and for us to grow at the rate that has been outlined for Viksit Bharat, everyone has to contribute, and we've got to work together as one team. And that's something that FICCI wants to do in terms of being able to partner with the government to provide thought leadership, to understand what can be done together, and in some ways push our members as well to say that here's how we've got to step up. It's not just about asking, it's about doing things. And most importantly, this has to be inclusive growth. So therefore, the theme for us this year is around inclusive growth. That has 4 key pillars to it. One is Make in India, because that is going to be critical for us to be able to achieve Viksit Bharat objectives. The second is around women-led development. And here again, there are significant areas of growth that we need to drive as a country, as a society. The third is around farm prosperity, because as you mentioned earlier as well, having rural India participate in this growth is essential for this to happen. And the fourth is around sustainability. India has taken leadership on the global stage in sustainability, and there's a lot more that we can do. So therefore, the theme is really around inclusive growth with Make in India, women-led development, farm prosperity, and sustainability.
And you know, that's fascinating, because women-led growth and sustainability is definitely key to our version of being a developed nation that we have in view. But for this to really happen, you need more than the top companies of India to participate. And a long-standing narrative / concern has been, what about the SME sector? I would just want to get your sense whether the small and medium enterprises, whether these companies in the unlisted space, in you know, rural areas or tier 2, tier 3 cities, are they seeing that kind of a resurgence that we're clearly seeing from Q2 numbers or quarterly numbers? That's one indicator. But what is happening in the SME space?
I think there's a lot more that is required in that space, and I don't think we're seeing the growth numbers there that we would ideally like. And that's part of the role that we want to play over the next few months in terms of understanding what else can we do to drive growth of MSMEs. Because as we think about building ecosystems, even for companies coming to India for the supply chain and for Indian manufacturing to grow, the ecosystem will consist of various MSMEs, various mid-sized companies. It's not going to be just large companies. And therefore, it's very important for us to develop these ecosystems that will propel India's growth.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as now president of FICCI, the question will be asked more and more, maybe not on day one, but I will start off with it, about now what do you expect from the government? We're heading into an election. Before that, there will be a vote on account where perhaps not too much room for change, and then a full-blown budget. What are your expectations from the governance and policy side to really continue this momentum, especially for India Inc.? You've seen a slew of schemes, PLI, etc., but what more would be on your wish list?
So Tamanna, as you said, you know, this is a question not just on day one, but on the morning in the first question, in a sense. So our expectation really is for economics to be at the forefront and not politics. Now, it's obviously a difficult expectation because government typically will have to manage both. But what we have seen of the current government is that they have put economics first. If I go back to the budget earlier this year as well, it was economics first. If you think about FICCI Bharat, it's about growth and growth for everyone. So economics along with inclusive growth is really what we see is required for the company to go forward. And that, in a nutshell, is the expectation that we would have.
You know, just a word on inclusive growth, and you mentioned that before as well as one of the 4 pillars and themes for this year as far as FICCI is concerned. How does one achieve inclusive growth? Because even as we talk about, you know, market cap crossing $4 trillion, we talk about when we're going to hit 5 trillion as a GDP, you are seeing signs of a K-shaped recovery. And I know that's a very overused term, but in simple terms, passenger vehicles selling more than two-wheelers, or higher-end luxury apartments selling more than affordable apartments. And no developed economy status or real growth can be achieved without closing that gap. Can you go into a little more detail of how you see that gap closing in?
So, Tamanna, I'm going to first go back to the goals we have as a country for FICCI Bharat. We're looking at going to $32 trillion of GDP. We're looking at a per capita income that is going to be 6 to 9x, depending on how you calculate it based on real or nominal. We're looking at manufacturing having to go up 15 to 16 times versus where we are. This is not going to be possible only by large companies growing bigger. Yes, large companies have to play a role, but it has to be on the back of everyone growing. And that's really where the pillars for us come in. It has to be women playing a key role in driving the economy, and that's where women-led development comes in. It's about farm prosperity and ensuring that farmers as well as the ecosystems around farmers are growing at a rapid pace. It's about MSMEs and medium-sized companies creating the ecosystems required for Make in India and Make for the World. And it is around us being sustainable as a country. So without contribution from everyone, without growth at all levels, we're not going to achieve these goals. And that recognition is there, that is been made very clear by the Prime Minister and our government. And that's something as an industry we've got to find ways to create that inclusivity. And FICCI is going to play a leadership role in doing so.
We look forward to seeing how that plays out. But just, a couple of points before I let you go, Dr. Shah, and thank you for your time today, when I know you have a slew of interviews to do. So India's Q2 GDP growth hit 7.6%. We have been talking incessantly here in the studios and, to people we meet, stakeholders, people who watch this channel, about how India's time is now, about how the globe is watching India. Do you see that in practical terms as a company leader, as a group company leader? Do you see that changing?
Absolutely. India's time is now. There is a lot that India has accomplished in the recent past, and we are very well positioned to take leadership across the world.